The plaster had held for 56 years. On the morning of August 9, 2023, in the town of Harlan, Kentucky, population 1,600, a demolition crew working a condemned property on Sycamore Hollow Road broke through an interior wall on the second floor and found something that stopped every man on the job. The foreman, a soft-spoken Harlan County native named Dennis Prater, later told investigators he had been in the trades for 31 years and had never once called the police from a job site. He called them that morning. What was behind the plaster wall had been there since the summer of 1967. And what happened in the weeks that followed would force a small Appalachian coal town to reckon with a crime that had been hiding inside one of its own buildings, on one of its own streets, for more than half a century. To understand what was found inside that wall and what it meant, you first have to understand the town that surrounded it and the woman who was taken from it. This was 1967. Harlan County, Kentucky, was a place defined by coal. The mines shaped everything: the work schedules, the social calendar, the moral economy of who owed whom and who could be trusted. Men went underground before sunrise. Women managed the households, the churches, the school committees, the informal networks that kept communities like Sycamore Hollow functioning between disasters. A bad roof collapse could take 6 men at once, and the town had learned to absorb grief quickly, because the grief never stopped coming. What it had not learned to absorb was the disappearance of one of its own women in the full light of summer. Dorothy Vance Combs was 28 years old when she was last seen alive. She was a practical woman, the daughter of a miner, the wife of a miner, the mother of 2 boys, ages 4 and 7. She had grown up on the same ridge road where she and her husband, Ray Combs, had built their life. She taught Sunday school at Second Baptist Church, the one on the back road below the mine access. She kept a garden that the neighbors noticed because it produced more than a single family could use, and she gave the surplus away: tomatoes, green beans, summer squash, wrapped in newspaper, left on front stoops without ceremony. She had a practical streak that people in Harlan called good sense, and people who didn't know her called plain. She was neither. She was attentive, organized, and honest in the way that people are honest when they have never had reason to be otherwise. In early June of 1967, Ray Combs began a renovation project on the second floor of the house they rented on Sycamore Hollow Road. The owner, a property landlord named Clifton Bray, 51 years old, lived in Pineville, drove up once a month to collect, had agreed to a rent reduction in exchange for some interior work. Ray had construction skills from a stint before the mines. The project was simple: frame a new interior partition to divide the upstairs into 2 rooms, run the drywall, finish it with plaster, something to give the boys their own space. Dorothy helped Ray frame the partition in the first week of June. She was seen at the lumber yard on Miners Drive with him on a Saturday. A neighbor, a woman named Louise Hatfield, who lived directly across the road, remembered watching Dorothy carry boards from the truck bed that afternoon, her hair pinned back, her youngest boy following her with small wooden offcuts like they were toys. 3 weeks later, Dorothy Combs was gone. She was last seen on a Tuesday evening, June 27, 1967. Ray Combs told investigators that Dorothy had mentioned going to her mother's house on the far side of the ridge, about 2 miles by road, to bring her some of the garden surplus. He said he had been at the mine that day on a maintenance shift and came home to an empty house. He put the boys to bed. He assumed she had stayed the night at her mother's. At 8:14 the following morning, Dorothy's mother, a woman named Ida Vance, called the house on Sycamore Hollow Road. Dorothy had not been there. She had not called. She had not come. Ray told her not to worry. By noon, Ida Vance had walked to 3 neighbors' houses. By 2 o'clock, the church women's committee had organized a search. By 4 o'clock, the Harlan County Sheriff's Department had a deputy on Sycamore Hollow Road taking a statement from Ray Combs. What investigators found, and what they did not find, shaped the next 56 years. Dorothy's garden shoes were by the back door. Her church purse was on the kitchen table. Her car, a tan 1961 Chevy Biscayne, was in the gravel drive where it always sat. The neighbors confirmed it had been there since at least the previous afternoon. Nothing was missing. Nothing was wrong. Except Dorothy. Ray Combs told the deputy that Dorothy had always been independent, that she sometimes visited relatives without telling him in advance, that she might have caught a ride with someone. He said it calmly. The deputy noted in his report that Ray had answered all questions without hesitation and had appeared cooperative. He had also, the deputy noted, recently plastered the interior partition wall upstairs. The plaster was still curing. Ray said he had finished it the weekend before. It smelled of new lime and wet stone. No one checked behind it. The investigation that followed was conducted by Harlan County Sheriff's Office deputies, working a county that, in the summer of 1967, had 17 open cases and a staff of 6. Detective resources were not what the case needed. The lead investigator, a deputy named Chester Markham, 34 years old, 12 years on the force, pursued 2 lines of inquiry in the first month. The first was Ray Combs himself. Markham found 2 witnesses who described Ray's disposition toward Dorothy as controlling in the way of a man who believed control was the natural order of things. A woman at Second Baptist said Dorothy had come to her once with a bruised forearm and said she had walked into a cabinet. The woman at Second Baptist knew what that meant. She told Markham. Markham documented it. But there was nothing that put Ray Combs at the scene of a crime, because there was no confirmed crime scene. Dorothy's body had not been found. There was no physical evidence of violence. Without a body, without blood, without a witness, the law in 1967 Harlan County offered Markham very little room to move. He sought a warrant to question Ray more formally. The sheriff denied it. The sheriff and Ray's uncle had been in the same mining crew for 9 years. The second line of inquiry was a drifter, a transient worker who had been in the county for 2 weeks doing harvest labor on a farm outside of town and had left on approximately the same day Dorothy disappeared. His name was known, Lester Dale Fugit, but he could not be located. His name went into the file. The file went onto the shelf. By September of 1967, the Harlan County Sheriff's Department had listed Dorothy Combs as a voluntary missing person. The classification required no evidence. It required only a deputy willing to write it. Chester Markham objected in writing. The objection was filed. Nothing changed. Dorothy's mother, Ida Vance, went to the sheriff's office 14 times in the next 3 years. She brought written statements from neighbors. She brought the testimony of the woman from Second Baptist. She brought a letter she had written herself, 4 pages, single-spaced, in the careful handwriting of a woman who had not been to school past the 8th grade, but understood that words on paper had a weight that words spoken to a sheriff did not. Every time, she was told the case remained open. Every time, she walked back down the steps of the courthouse and drove home past Sycamore Hollow Road, past the house where her daughter had lived, past the wall that Dorothy had helped frame in the first week of June. Ray Combs moved out of the Sycamore Hollow Road house in March of 1968, 9 months after Dorothy's disappearance. He relocated to Bell County with his 2 sons. He remarried in 1971. He worked in the mines until his back gave out in the early 1980s, then did odd carpentry jobs around the county. He never returned to Harlan County. He died of emphysema in Middlesboro, Kentucky, in April of 2019, at the age of 83. By then, 44 years had passed since Dorothy disappeared, and 52 since the plaster was poured. The house on Sycamore Hollow Road had changed hands 3 times. The first new tenants, a family named Sexton, lived there for 11 years and never knew what was in the wall. The second, a man named Tolliver, who used the upstairs as storage, was there for 6 years. The third family left when the foundation began to show trouble in the mid-1990s. After that, the property sat vacant, passed between heirs of the Bray estate, nobody able to agree on what to do with it, nobody willing to pay for what it would cost to fix it. In 2022, the city of Harlan condemned it. Ida Vance had died in 1994, still waiting. She had never stopped believing that her daughter was somewhere in that house. Chester Markham, by then 89 years old and living with his daughter in Corbin, had written about the Combs case in a personal memoir he self-published in 2011 for family members. 11 pages. He named Ray Combs directly. He named the sheriff who had blocked the warrant. He named the wall. The memoir reached approximately 40 people. Every case on this channel represents weeks of painstaking research through old records, court documents, and the quiet testimony of families who kept the faith when no one else would. If you believe those stories deserve to be heard, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe. Tell us in the comments where in the world you're watching from. That community matters to us. Now let's go back to Sycamore Hollow Road. Because in August of 2023, Dennis Prater's demolition crew put a sledgehammer through the wrong wall, and 56 years of plaster came down with it. The Kentucky State Police Cold Case Unit was on the scene within 90 minutes of Prater's call. What they found was consistent with remains that had been enclosed within a sealed cavity for approximately 5 to 6 decades, according to the forensic anthropologist called to the scene that afternoon. The remains were mostly skeletal, but there were artifacts, a fragment of cotton fabric in a faded print consistent with 1960s domestic textile patterns, a single shoe, a woman's flat, brown leather, size 6, a thin gold band, oxidized, on the left-hand ring finger. Detective Lena Caudill of the KSP Cold Case Unit, who had joined the unit in 2019 after 12 years in homicide, ran the address through the Kentucky State Police Cold Case database that evening. The Combs case came up immediately. Dorothy Combs, age 28, missing since June 27, 1967. Last known address, Sycamore Hollow Road, Harlan, Kentucky. Caudill pulled the file. She read Chester Markham's 1967 objection memo. She found the name of the woman from Second Baptist, the one who had told Markham about the bruised forearm. And then she found something that Markham had documented, but that no one had followed up on in 56 years. A witness statement from a neighbor boy, age 11 in 1967, who said he had seen Ray Combs loading something heavy, wrapped in canvas tarps, into the bed of a pickup truck on the evening of June 27th, the same evening Dorothy was last seen. The boy had thought Ray was hauling construction debris. The name of the 11-year-old witness in 1967 was written at the top of the statement form. Caudill found him living in Harlan. He was 77 years old now. He remembered everything. He had never been contacted again after giving the initial statement. He had assumed the matter was resolved. He had not known, until Detective Caudill knocked on his door on the afternoon of August 10, 2023, that Dorothy Combs had never been found, that nobody had ever come back to talk to him, that everything he had seen on that June evening in 1967 had been sitting in a file folder, while the answer sat behind a wall a quarter-mile from his front door. "I thought they knew," he told Codil. "I thought they must have figured it out." The forensic identification came 6 weeks later. Dental records from Dorothy's dentist, a Harlan County practitioner who had kept meticulous files, now archived, confirmed the remains. DNA comparison with Dorothy's surviving son, now 60 years old and living in Lexington, confirmed it again. Dorothy Vance Combs. Murdered in the summer of 1967, hidden behind a wall in the house where she had lived and the house she had helped build. Ray Combs had been dead for 4 years by the time his name was formally placed on the case as the sole identified suspect. The Kentucky State Police and the Harlan County Commonwealth's attorney reviewed the complete evidence file in early 2024 and issued a finding that Raymond Elroy Combs had, beyond reasonable evidentiary doubt, murdered Dorothy Vance Combs on or about June 27, 1967, and concealed her remains within a plasterboard partition he finished in the days immediately following her death. The finding noted that the partition had been framed with Dorothy's help. She had carried the boards from the truck bed. She had helped measure and cut. She did not know what the wall was for. The woman from Second Baptist, now 91 years old, sharp as a wire, living in a retirement home outside of Cumberland, was read the finding over the phone by a victim's advocate from the Commonwealth's attorney's office. She did not say anything for a moment. Then she said, "I told Chester Markham. I told him in 1967. And he believed me. But they wouldn't let him do anything about it." Chester Markham died in 2018, 1 year before Ray Combs. He did not live to see the finding. His daughter was contacted by the state police, who told her that her father's 1967 objection memo had been entered into the official record and cited as a document that demonstrated the correct investigative instinct had been present from the beginning and had been suppressed. Dorothy's son, Robert Combs of Lexington, gave a single statement to the press. He was 60 years old. He had been 4 when his mother disappeared. He said he had spent his life with a story he was told, that she had left, that she had walked away, that she had chosen to go. He had grown up with a particular kind of damage that comes from being told your mother abandoned you, when the truth was that she never left the house at all. She was there the whole time, he said. She never left us. She was right there. Dorothy Combs had a garden that gave more than one family could use. She carried surplus tomatoes and green beans to her neighbors' front stoops wrapped in newspaper, without ceremony. Because she understood that a community was something you maintained through small daily acts, and that those acts didn't require acknowledgement to matter. She was 28 years old. She had a 4-year-old and a 7-year-old. She taught Sunday school. She helped carry boards from a truck bed for a renovation project on a Tuesday afternoon in June, while her youngest boy trailed behind her collecting scraps. She was murdered by the person she trusted most, hidden in a wall she had helped build, and officially classified as a woman who had chosen to leave. The classification held for 56 years because one small-town sheriff had a relationship with the right uncle, and because the law in 1967 Harlan County required a body before it would act. The body was there. It was 18 inches behind the plaster. What does it say about the systems we built to protect people when the obstacle to justice is not a lack of evidence, but a lack of will? What do we owe to the women, and there are others, in other counties, in other walls, who were classified as voluntary departures, because it was easier than naming the man in the house? And how many cases from that era are sitting unsolved, not because the answers aren't there, but because someone decided, in 1967 or 1971 or 1984, that the answer was inconvenient? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And if you know of a case that deserves this kind of attention, a name that was never found, a file that was never followed up, tell us about it. Justice came for Dorothy Vance Combs after 56 years. It came because a demolition crew swung a sledgehammer, because a detective pulled the right file, and because an 11-year-old boy who was now 77 had never forgotten what he saw on a June evening in 1967. If you believe that truth is worth pursuing no matter how long it takes, subscribe. More cases are waiting in the description below. Thank you for being here.